All right, class. So today we will be going over some basic editing techniques. I will be editing out of Adobe Premiere Pro, but for most of what we will be doing, it is going to be just the same where you have like a timeline and you'll be dragging clips down to the timeline. So depending on what editing software you're using, the interface in itself might be a little bit different. So whatever you're using, a lot of this stuff still can apply to it. So jumping right in, as you can see with a lot of the clips that we do have down on the timeline, we do have these where you can see that the clips are labeled with the slate. And just so you can see what the beginning of a lot of these clips look like, I'm just going to take this clip and I'm going to move it down the timeline, and then we're going to go to the beginning of the clip, and for some reason the clip is now no longer scaled properly, so we're going to reset these parameters. All right. And so here you see the slate. We always want to start our clips with the slate. This is why it's very important to have that slate in there, so that way your editor knows that this right here is scene 1A, take 2, and that is the take that we will be using for this. All right, so come back over. We kind of have a sign here, and this sign will kind of serve as our transition shot or our opening shot to kind of just let us know where we are.
I'm changing the rules tonight. I believe we have a bad apple amongst the donors. We need to make sure everything goes well. No hiccups. And don't be all scary. This is a different kind of battlefield. I like this one. What do you think?
Fragile.
Perfect. We'll start here. Take this one to room X. Hurry, please. Guests will be arriving.
All right, so as you see, we started with our opening shot, and then we transition into our B-roll. Our B-roll is going to be this party footage. So we're going to have various people around, and this shows the progression of time as we move forward. And then we...
Where the hell are my guests?
...have more dialogue.
They all checked in, so they should be... better not be in those
So this right here
already.
Is now one of the
Paxes,
parts
go
that
check.
I do want us to kind of focus on, where we do have our match on action. So what we have with this is we have at the end of one clip, we see the character walking towards the right of the screen. And then since we kind of would go to the reverse, where it would flip it, we see her entering from the right of the screen because now the camera setup has now changed. And so we want to match that action as it happens. So what this looks like before we fully dive into it, what you always want to do is really just a game of frames a lot of times, because this clip, if we extend it, we don't want it to leave it too empty right here before we jump into our next frame, because then that makes it a bad edit. And then also we don't want to have too much leeway because as we see with that, we have it where our character is now out of the frame, and then we had the character still slating. So just to show this again this time, so you definitely don't want to have this in your final cut where you have the slate and then you have your character moving out of frame. And then if we put it here, and let's just ripple delete on that to bring the timeline down together. So we have her walking away, and then it's just too much time that we have before we see this character come back into frame. So that's one of the things that I'd be looking for in your edit when I'm grading edit, is I'm looking for that timing and I'm looking for those frames. It's just a matter of frames, and you just don't want to linger on a shot for too long that's empty. So if we count the frames here, we see the character, we don't even leave the screen. So this is a creative choice. And then we are a few frames in. We can even shave that down a little bit more. And then, like I say, go in here. And this is a thing with Premiere Pro, and this is why I like using Premiere Pro, because I can do ripple deletes, and it's not super magnetic on the timeline as some others are. So you see, she leaves the frame, and then we have a match on action if we do it that way. And then what that looks like to speed. But we kind of want to, you can also create that distance. So you can also have it where we're creating a little bit more distance to show how far she has to walk. So by giving us a few
My
beats
friends.
before we get into that shot, it creates that idea that she had a little bit further to walk. But if you want to close that distance, that was the other way to do it, where you can shave those frames down. And that right there is the editor and director's choice. Now, when we have our B-roll footage, we 100% don't
My
necessarily
friends.
need this B-roll footage.
Welcome
But then it just
to the
becomes
lounge.
another shot of our actor just kind of there. So what we want to do is we want to go in and we place the B-roll footage at certain spots. So then that way, these actors are also alive in this world. So there's other things going on. So as she addresses the party, you see everyone turn around.
Welcome to the lounge. We had a great evening planned for you tonight, but it seems some people decided to start a bit early.
So then so with your B-roll footage, like, you know, like that was like a little party host joke. You only have one person laughing, which goes to show like, okay, that joke wasn't supposed to be actually funny, but you have it where you're creating more of a narrative now within the
Keep your
edit.
masks on at all times.
And then we even have this line of keeping your mask on, and then we see someone
You
walking
keep
in the
your
background
masks on at all times.
with no mask. So this is how your B-roll footage can help push the narrative forward as well. So that is what it looks like if you want to put B-roll footage over top of the footage that you already have on the timeline.
At least
And then now we want to play with another idea of going from a different setup. So from this, the camera was angled to our actor's right, and it is a little bit off center, but she is kind of center, but closer to the right frame of the
of the
screen.
night. At least until you're as
And then we
powerful
come
as
to
I
a
am,
straight-on
because if
shot,
any
and
of
we
you
do
piss me
a
off, I
slow
will
zoom.
come for you, your heirs, and everything you love. But seriously, some of you clearly have been taking advantage of my kindness. The party hasn't even started, and yet
So then that's one of those examples of you want to create, you use camera movement to create more of a sense of feeling, a sense of tension. So she went from very
That
happy and welcoming
is the one and only rule
here
of
to
the
welcome
night.
the people to the party.
At least until you're as powerful as
And
I am,
then we get it
because
where
if any
she
of
is
you
a little
piss
bit
me
more
off, I
angry, a
will
little
come
bit
for
more
you,
stern,
your
a little
heirs,
bit more
and
direct.
everything.
So before we move into the next phase of editing that I want to talk about, I'm going to come back to this early clip. I do believe I have turned
I
off.
believe we have a bad apple amongst the donors.
So with this, you can kind of hear like the AC unit, the HVAC unit. You have that hum in the background, which is going to be very common with a lot of your projects, especially with the level of microphones that we have accessible to us.
We need
But there is a editing trick that we do have within Premiere that is called denoise. Most of the clips that we use, and you would just kind of take it and then you would just drag it directly onto the clip. We already have denoise on there, but just so you can hear the difference, what denoise does is it will take away that hum in the background.
to make sure everything goes well. No hiccups. And don't be all scary. This is a
So that's what it sounds like with the denoise off. I mean, with the denoise on. When we turn the denoise
different
off,
kind of battlefield.
you can hear that hum again.
I like this one. What do you think?
Turn it back on, that hum is eliminated. So denoise allows your clips because you will have a lot of ambient sound going on in the background. So now I want to move on down to our next phase. And then this right here is going from wide shots into medium shots into close-ups, and then also letting the audio and sound kind of play a part as well. So we have this here where we have a wide shot. We're still establishing the space. We got a little VFX. We have some sounds. She reacts to the sounds. And then we have this character emerging from the darkness. And then we have the music kick in as soon as he comes out of the darkness. Now, just to even take the low budget VFX off, and we show that again. Now it's still like, even without the lightning, we still have a character reacting to a noise. And then we also still have that match on action where we have the character look. So one of the tricks is if you are going to like use the same setup, and what we mean by setup is the same kind of camera angle that you have for the previous clip that's coming before, it's very important that if you are going to bump out, you want your character to be relatively in the same spot, doing the same motion, doing the same movement, so then that way it's not extremely jarring when it bumps out. And then this is where you can play with your idea shots, because you have this wide shot through a doorway where you have your vertical lines, and then you have a character who we haven't seen yet emerge from what it seems the darkness. You have this like organ comes in, and then this music plays, and you can get this, like I say, this match on action, a musical cue that kind of sets up the world, and this also helps push that narrative forward, where it becomes extremely ominous, where you would think that this right here is the bad guy. So then now with this part, now we're going to play with the idea of a little bit more metrics in the sense of we're going to have some Soviet montage in this. We're going to have the metric montage, and then also the rhythmic montage, where we will have a metric montage where you will see, as you can see on the timeline right now, some of these clips are, especially these three right here, they are going to be the same length, 1, 2, 3, and that's what we mean by the metric montage. Also right here, 1, 2, 3, we have like we're working in threes, and then we also are going to have some clips that will edit and go with the beat. So like, let's listen to this. Bell, bell, bell. So that's where we have, like I say, we do have some Soviet montage where we do have some metrics. We do have some rhythmic montage where we are trying to edit and cut on the beat as close as possible. And then we do also have some match on actions, because this is a very action forward sequence. And as you see, the more action that you have and the more match on action that you want to have, you have a lot more clips that you are working with, because you're constantly cutting back and forth. And this is how you kind of hide a lot of the action that is going on, because the budget may not be there for you to have things specifically a certain way. So we go back to the Soviet montage that we use. So right here we have it where we're going to have things like edit on the beat, or like motions happen on the beat. So we're going to watch the hand. That's the first bell. And then the second bell, we're going to take this weapon out of the waistband. And then the third bell, we're going to come back, and then it's going to be the weapon ignited pointing down. And we have that infamous cowboy shot. So this is a way how you can use a cowboy shot, and you're using it in a storytelling standpoint. Because the origination of the cowboy shot is from Westerns, and it was from the hip, because the cowboys would pull their revolver from off of their waistband, from off of their hip. So then we get these close-ups, and once again, if we come back in, we can zoom in, you see that these clips are the same length. So then this is when it becomes like metric. And then we come into our action. So one of the things that I do want us to do, excuse me, going forward, is making sure that we're paying attention to our match on action. Because as we see here, in a wide shot, then we come to the close-up, where we are matching the action as close as we can. So she has her lightsaber up with it angled to her characters to the right. Then when it comes back, the blade is still angled to the character's right, and she's swinging it, and then we get a block, and we get some motion going on. We get a little back and forth. And then we have another match on action where the guy in the black, we're just going to call him the man in black, he extends his hand, and then we cut to the other setup where we also see his hand being extended. So there's various creative ways that you can go about that. You can either decide to cut back with this character's hands fully extended. So let's ungroup this clip. So we decide to bring it back there, and then let's say we want to bring it here where his hand's already done, and that match on action still works. So it's like the hand is fully extended, and then when we cut to the next shot, the hand is still fully extended. Even though we could probably shave off a few frames to get a little bit more stillness there. So that is where it becomes a creative choice as an editor of, do you want to move with the characters moving to match their movement, or would you rather do it where the characters have stopped moving, and in that way it's just a match on poses and posture. So you have various different ways that you can do that. And then we come back to, you see this character, she lifts her lightsaber up and then brings it down, and we cut back on that action of her arms moving. So you don't necessarily want to match the same action 100%, but you want to make it flow where you're matching the following action that comes from what's going on. So that way everything is still moving. So you don't want anything like stationary and static. And then even with here, this is an example of where you can use camera movement to help match on action, because this right here is a static shot on a tripod that would, as we would say, on sticks. And then as we move to the wide shot, we have the camera panning down as this character's going down. So this is another example of a match on action, where now you're using camera movement to help with that match on action. And then once we have this girl down to her knees, now we can cut back to a close-up. And this is an example of, like I say, like you can use it from a static standpoint where the movement has already stopped, and in that way you kind of have a cleaner cut, or you can do it when the movement is still happening. So all of these are creative choices that you can make as an editor. And then we also have inserts, because even with this, we don't need necessarily these close-ups of them, because we can always just go directly to what comes next. So if we take these close-ups out, and then we just come here, right? So it becomes, and this is what we mean by like the editor is the third and final retelling of the story. Because this shot still works just as much. It just doesn't have as much tension if we take those close-ups out. Because now she just pushes him away, and then we go into our next sequence. But if we bring back what we just had, because that is about, I would say probably like 5 seconds worth of footage right here, where we have this close up, her looking up, him looking down, the sabers reflected in his mask, and then the push off. All right, so this right here will be just some of the basic editing techniques that we will use. There is also one more thing that I would like to show you all, and this right here is another thing that you can use to like really like help yourself when you are creating your projects and doing things, is you can go to create a new adjustment layer. I'm not familiar with how to use adjustment layers on any other editing software outside of Premiere, but when you put an adjustment layer, if you want to do like a quick color grade, you can just come to your adjustment layer. You can go to like a creative look, and let's say we're just going to choose blue steel because that's, I don't know, I just decided to use blue steel. So when you have blue steel, so if we take that off, this right here is the color that we have. But when we put the adjustment layer on, it changes everything blue. So then that's one thing that we can do, where you can also play with the intensity of it. So then this makes this very cool, very cold. We have all of this like down this new glow. let's say, we're not really feeling this, but you know what? I like Western. So like, cause I really like the cowboy shot. So now we can give it that like Western orange kind of hue. But as you see with this, it does change a lot of what we have in the background. So then you can come back up here. And if you change, make sure that your adjustment layer is highlighted. And then this is where you can go in and you can change a lot of things. And this changes it overall for the entire project. I mean, not the entire project, but for whatever is underneath that adjustment layer. Play with the intensity. And then now you have a quick little color grade. And that is all that we have for our quick editing lesson now. As always, if you do have questions, feel free to send me an email, shoot me a message, and I will do my best to steer you in the right direction.